So I went to Penn State University. I was so happy to get out of Pittsburgh. My father drove me to Penn State. Freshman orientation, first day, I'm in my dorm. It's a beautiful fall day in this rectangular window. I'm looking out in the parking lot. People getting acquainted, parents talking, people taking their luggage out of the backs of the cars. And I make eye contact with this curly brown-haired girl. I start sweating. I envision my entire life with this girl in 15 seconds. We're going to date, we're going to get married, we're going to have 2 1/2 children. Everything's set. She looks back at me, and I think it's a smile. She turns to her friends, looks back at me again, puts her hand just like this. I remember it like it was yesterday. Ugly, ugly. Ugh. Now, I do not blame that girl for the things that happened after she said that. Environmental triggers are in the millions. If it wasn't this, it would be that. And people react differently. Another kid might have gone ugly back and flipped her off. Another kid might have said whatever. We react based on how we are genetically, socially, environmentally programmed to react. And at that point, I was programmed to react with shame. And I remember thinking my entire life was out of control, that I would never be loved, that I would never get my first kiss with a girl, that I would never go on a date, that my mother would never love me, because how could she love somebody who is ugly? But my mother loved me dearly, and we have a wonderful relationship today. She loved me dearly. What did I have control over? My entire world is spinning and spinning. What did I have control over as an 18-year-old boy, alone at a university at the size of Penn State? I had control over food. That was it, in my mind. But eating more was associated with fat pig, was associated with the day of the gold pants. So I decided that my path to love, self-love, the love of that curly brown-haired girl, the love of my mother, the respect of my brothers, the respect of the bullies, was to get thinner and restrict my food intake. And restrict, I did. And restrict. And before I knew it, I was binging and purging, traditionally, which is vomiting your food up. I didn't know what bulimia was. I didn't know what an eating disorder was. This is in 1979. This was 4 years before the wonderful, beautiful singer Karen Carpenter, on top of the world, died from complications related to anorexia, bringing it into the pre-digital national spotlight. If you've never heard her, look it up, a golden voice. What I did know was that every time I binged and purged, I felt this sense of peace in my stomach instead of shame. But the problem was that sense of peace lasted for 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then in swooped the shame of engaging in an act that I didn't understand, that I didn't have a name for, but that I knew was inherently shameful. Guys don't stick their fingers down their throat to throw up their food. They don't do that. I don't know why they don't do that, but it's not what we do. Before anyone was talking about eating disorders. Then I transitioned into drinking at Penn State. I turned 21. I was going to the state stores. I was buying alcohol, putting it in my sock so I could go out and drink alone and get drunk just to go into the bars and get drunker. I was going to class drunk. I was going to class hungover. I was not going to class. I remember the closest I ever came at Penn State as an epiphany on recovery was walking into a hamburger joint and coming across a rack of pamphlets that the 12-step groups put out. And for those who do not know what 12-step is, Alcoholics Anonymous is the most well-known of them, although there are others. They're called the 20 questions, the pamphlets, and it was geared towards college students. Answer this many questions, check them off, and you may be a problem drinker. And I'm checking off, do you black out? Yes. Do you miss class? And I crumple it up, the first basket I ever made in their wastebasket, 2 points, I'm just a college student. We all do this. But they don't all do that. Then I transitioned into running excessive distances because the only time I felt at peace was when there was no one around me who I could make eye contact with and project that they were saying, you are a fat pig, you are not wanted, you will never be loved. And so I would run 10 miles a day, 20 miles a day, and then I would come back and eat and binge and purge. Some days I was so weak and dehydrated, it was difficult to get out of bed. I was able to graduate from Penn State. I was a criminal justice major. I wanted to be a police officer. That would have worked out well. I would have been the first guy in the evidence room training out the blow for the Manitoulin. I guarantee it. There'd be a movie about me, I just wouldn't be alive to watch it. I'm sitting in the placement office at Penn State, looking through police officer jobs, and there are these two guys from Pittsburgh, where I grew up, sitting next to me. They're talking about taking the LSATs. Law school admission test. And they're talking about going to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. Pittsburgh Law School admission test. Ding, 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 the bells go off in my head. What bells do you think those were? Not the bells of I want to be a lawyer, not the bells of I want to change the world, not the bells of I want to make a lot of money. The bells of I can stay in school for 3 more years and I can run 10 to 20 miles a day. I can drink my shame away, drink my pain away. I can binge and purge. I can isolate, and I can engage in the exact same survival behaviors that got me through 4 years at Penn State. Because it wasn't about where I would be in 3 years. It was about where I would be with my life 10 minutes from now. I was surviving. I was not living. Day to day, moment to moment, second to second. That was what I knew. That was all I knew. And for those reasons, it made perfect sense for me to go to law school. Yep, that's it. That was my rationale. So I did well enough on the LSATs. My grades were well enough to get into Pitt Law. And I went to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, 1986. I remember taking the bus from my parents' house. I get out and I'm looking in. Everyone's getting ready to go into the large courtroom for 1 hour orientation where they talk to you about this, they talk to you about that. And I'm looking at the crowd inside the glass doors. I see people getting away, getting acquainted, laughing, looking like they already knew each other. I think I even saw that curly, brown-haired girl. Well, not really, but in my mind, every girl in there was that curly, brown-haired girl, and every guy in there was the guys that ripped my pants off because I was projecting. Instead of realizing that they're all worried about their stuff, whether they're going to make it, I'm projecting that they're all thinking about me and what a lousy human being I am, what a fat pig I am, how undeserving I am to be there. Projection, not uncommon in addiction and depression. And the irony of all that is when I projected, it made perfect sense to me. I made the right decision. This is where I need to be because I will gladly now engage in those exact same behaviors and make it through 3 years of law school. But as we know, you can't just pull an all-nighter before a test in law school, give the information back the next day, and do well. Well, at least I can't. I know if some of you gunners out there maybe did, but I can't. I was not a very good law student, as you might imagine. Going to class sometimes drunk, going to class hungover, not going to class. I did my 1L moot court intoxicated, yes. A microcosm of my 3 years of Pitt Law would be my first year civil procedure class. You're all shrugging, oh, civil procedure. I show up one day, it was a morning class. I had been out all night drinking. I didn't know where my books were. I hadn't changed. I smelled, my 2 seatmates were, dude, go home. Take the L for this class. Just go home. Take the 0. You stink. And I'm sitting there, and the professor is working some jurisdictional problem on a blackboard. I think it was Pennoyer v. Neff or something like that. And I'm shrinking in my seat. I'm shrinking. Don't call me. Don't call me. Don't call me. Please, please. Mr. Cuban. What do you think of this problem here on the board? Professor, I don't have my books. I'm sorry, I'm not prepared. Pause. Well, Mr. Cuban, when you say you're not prepared, do you mean you're not prepared to answer this? What if I change the fact scenario to this? Professor, I'm sorry, I am just not ready here. I don't have my books. The Socratic method at work. Pause. Let me go home. Let me go home. Let me go home. Please, please, please. Mr. Cuban, I understand you don't have your books and you're not prepared. Ah! I uttered an expletive under my breath, but my words project, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to utter an expletive at their Civ Pro professor. One day I'll ask him if he heard me, and I booked up and I ran out of the room. That was my 3 years of Pitt Law. I graduated not here, not here, not here. You can't see my feet, but I was way down there by the skin of my teeth. I still have reoccurring nightmares about going to graduation, walking up to get my diploma, and the dean pulling it back, going, psych, psych, you didn't graduate, psych, psych. And I wake up going like this, and I'm sweating, ugh, ugh. The irony of that, more irony, is that I was so ashamed and didn't care. I didn't even go to graduation. Just mail it to me. It's okay. Now we are repeating cycles again. What am I going to do with my life? I'm going to move to Dallas, Texas. Why? Because my older brother Mark and Jeff had already moved there. I will be with the two people who do not judge me, who love me unconditionally. I had $50 to my name. I took a Greyhound bus. Mark met me at a McDonald's right by the Greyhound station downtown Dallas, and I moved in with him.